All right, hey everyone, welcome back to the coaching call. I'm Coach Mike, and Coach Ross is here with me again this week. We're going to be answering some questions for you. So let me pull up the questions. First one up for this week. Oh, by the way, I guess I should do maybe a somewhat quick intro. Obviously, the format that we're doing this is a little bit different this week. Our hope is that that'll let me and Ross both participate in this coaching call and keep the quality of the video high. So we're going to include timestamps in the description for each of the different questions. So if you want to just cut to your question, that's fine. Or if you want to listen to the whole thing, it should be easier to do that as well. So first question up for this week says, I currently train the following schedule. Monday, competition bench plus accessory. Tuesday, squat. Wednesday, GPP. Thursday, bench and accessory deadlift. Friday, Saturday is touch and go bench and accessories. If I was able to do a push pull, would deadlifting on Tuesday and squatting on Thursday, Saturday be better, as it's hard to be consistent from Wednesday onward? Yes, I think that would be better. So if you were going to compete in a push pull, then deadlifting obviously is going to be your priority. So you want to make sure that that gets hit every week. So yeah, I would on Tuesday you have squats, swap that out for deadlifts, and then place your squats on Thursday. If you don't get to them, things happen, life happens, right? But if you can hit it more often than not, that would be a benefit as well. But that way, if a contingency does show up, then you're at least able to get your highest priority work done. So it seems fairly straightforward to me. Ross, anything that you want to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It's going to be pretty rare that you would not want to have your most priority lifts first in the week. And I guess the priority of what exercises are priority could definitely change based on whether it's, a 3-lift meet or a bench only meet or a push pull meet. So.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so next question. This one says, Coach Jim reviewed my competition progress and noted correctly that my competition bench is more or less stagnating. As requested, you can find 3 different high RPE videos in my bench. Those are attached. We're going to be focusing on your competition bench. You've got a set of 5 at an 8.5 RPE. That one, we're going to focus on that video. It's nice if we can get heavier than this, like a single, double, triple at like a 9 or a 10 RPE. But we'll make do with what we've got, and this should show us something, I hope. Let's see. It says that my competition bench is in the 4th week of declining, but I can't really pinpoint the reason or cause. Last week, my push muscles felt rather fatigued, so I skipped Thursday's close grip 3 board and the Friday floor press, also in hope that my competition bench today would actually improve, but it didn't. Now, just some quick comments on that thing before we move on. So that would be Thursday close grip, Friday floor press, and you sent this message on looks like a Monday. So unless I'm mistaken, it reads like you took about 4 days off. That's probably too much, especially if you're accustomed to training at high frequencies, like most of these programs are. Taking 4 days off, you really don't need it unless there's probably an injury in play, or if you've got a lot of accumulated fatigue. 2 days, 2 rest days is for the most part all people need to perform well. And I've noticed for myself in particular that even if after 2 rest days I still have a little bit of fatigue, like I can still feel a bit of soreness or whatnot, my performance is at a peak. Okay, and resting longer than that is detrimental, even if those last little bits of soreness go away. But I just wanted to say something there real quick before we move on. You go on to say that my squat and deadlift are progressing very well. So I'd be more than happy if my bench started to show the same progress. Then we've got a video. So let me pull up the video here quickly. All right, Ross, you'll have to let me know, make sure that that's coming through all right.
I can see it, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're going to watch this video and see what we can see. It's, from a technical standpoint, it's difficult to see something like bar path, which would be really useful to see. Like your grip, it could be a bit narrow. You may want to try a wider grip, unless, unless of course you've got shoulder injuries or something like that that prevents you from going any wider than this. Besides that, I mean, you can see that the bar speed is going to start bleeding off pretty close to chest level, which is not a surprise for a raw lifter. But at an 8.5 RPE, there's just not a whole lot of other breakdowns that are happening. So it's something like a bar path issue, or some other sort of deviation is not really going to show up at an 8.5 RPE, and even a 9 RPE isn't going to be a lot different. So I would encourage you, if you can get some video of something a bit higher RPE, send that in. Otherwise, be really cautious about cutting down the volume of the training program. That volume is going to be really helpful for you in terms of, there we go. Great. That volume is going to be really helpful for you in terms of progressing your lifts into the future. If you're accumulating too much fatigue in your pressing muscles, that's going to show up as more than just soreness. Like soreness by itself, unless it's getting ridiculous, I wouldn't think that that's a reason to really cut down your volume that much. Ross, what are your thoughts on this one?
I would definitely agree with the width, the bench grip width, provided that the shoulders and pecs are healthy enough to handle it. It does look a little narrow. Probably, I wouldn't, if I were to play with that adjustment, I wouldn't change things more than like 2 fingers either way at a time. And when you make that change too, you have to keep in mind that it's ideal to play with that change for a few weeks at a time. Like if you're going to move it out wider 2 fingers, you need to stay there for probably 4 to 6 weeks to really put some time investment into it to see if that's a favorable change for the lifter or not. You can't just do 1 session and be like, oh, that feels weird, and quit. So you gotta spend some time with it. Other than that, yeah, it's difficult to tell if there's a bar path issue. If where they're touching on their chest, if they're losing position on their chest or losing position up top, where that limit really is.
Yeah, I would be able to come up with a lot more specific recommendations if we could get. So in order to see bar path, we'd need your camera to move a little bit more of an offset, so we can see just a little bit more of a side view. It doesn't have to be completely a side view, but just a bit more than what it is currently. And something that's going to be higher RPE is going to be useful as well. It's to the point too where, this has been going on for a little while. It's been difficult for you to gain some momentum on your bench. It might be worth, kind of going off program and taking a heavy double or a heavy single even, just for the purposes of figuring out what we can do to improve things going forward. So I'm not a fan of just kind of dogmatically sticking to the program. when it's kind of shown that it's not producing the results that we want.
I'd also be curious, it didn't say in the question like what the stagnation is, did it? I mean, because there's some people that'll just have a slow responding bench and then it'll respond real flat and then spike up. So how much is it actually declining? Is it declining by 1 pound, 2 pounds, 20 pounds?
It didn't say in the question, but it does say that Jim was the one that checked it out. So I'm inclined to agree with the assessment, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good point as well that benches do tend to be a bit slower to respond. You do have to look a bit more closely to see the progress there a lot of times, but
Body weight changes.
Yeah, body weight changes can affect that as well. So I think that's probably some food for thought for you, at least. So let me know what you come up with, especially if you get another video, send that in and we'll get this. Hopefully we'll start making some forward progress on this real soon. Again, be cautious with any sort of volume adjustments that you're doing. All right, so let's move on to the next question. All right, this one says, it's in response to kind of a continuation from last week's question. It says, thanks for the video. My feeling at the moment is that I'm done with the group that I'm in and I would like to move to one which makes more use of my time. I understand what you're saying about how this might not be effective, but at the same time, I think that I've built up a lot of frustration trying to push through the training, and that changing it up might give me a bit of a push in the correct direction to enjoy training again instead of just getting frustrated and not hitting the numbers that I got last time around. I don't know what the other groups are like, but at the moment, I'm finding it hard to judge my RPE on the workup sets. For example, today I had squats, 4 reps at 7, 8, and then 9 with a load drop. My first set of 170 moved well and felt like a 7 or 7.5. But then what should have been an 8 at 180, I got 1 at a 9. So I dropped the weight and did the other sets at the corresponding RPEs. Are there any options for me to work up to a single at an RPE and then use a percent for the volume work so I'm able to judge the RPE better on the lower rep work? Long story short, yes, we can get you into a training group that will address all of those concerns. So I'll just go ahead and make that switch. Just make a quick note of that to make that switch over for you. And yeah, we'll have that set up for you probably later today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But certainly it'll take effect by next week. And I'll probably go ahead and make the change prior to that so that you can have an adjusted training week for this week if you wanted to start sooner. All right. Next question. Next question says, thanks for responding to my question last week. Based on your answers to my questions and the fact that I've tried the assistance exercises you recommend and haven't seen any progress, I decided I'd like to switch my training group to change my squat protocol. He attached a picture of his squat progress, and yeah, I mean, it looks like it's time. If possible, I'd like to be in a training group with a regular mix of upper and lower on the same day, rather than 2 upper and 2 lower split days, but that's not as important to me as trying something new for the squat. Sure thing. That also shouldn't be a problem, so we'll get that switched over for you. So next question. Next question says, do you recommend logging GPP work? This one's really up to you. I don't know. I don't review GPP work as it's logged, but I know for me personally, I want to make sure that my training log is as complete as I can make it. So I do log my GPP work. Correction, I log most of my GPP work. There's some stuff that I do daily. I do some ab work, and I walk and do some inversion stuff daily. And I don't log that because it's just, daily, it's in the background. Um, I keep track of it separate from my training log. I have a reminder on my phone actually that reminds me to do it, and then so it gets checked off that way. So for me personally, I log most of my GPP work, but if it's kind of one of these daily things that just occurs in the background, that maybe doesn't get logged specifically. Um, yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say on that. Ross, anything to add?
Not really. I mean, a lot of GPU work can be hard to log to, depending on what it is. Um,
Yeah.
I know one of my recommendations for GPP is to try and find something as a physical activity that you enjoy to do that's away from the barbell. Um, just kind of seems to be helpful for mental mindset, mental health, and things like that. So I know for myself personally, I do a lot of hiking and snowboarding. It's be pretty hard to log that other than just know the day that you went and did it. But I mean, I
Well, you could.
suppose you could keep track of your elevation hikes if you're, but I don't know. I haven't ever tracked any of that. I just go do it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of similar for me lately. A lot of the GPP I've been doing has been boxing and kickboxing. So I've just built exercises. You can make custom exercises in the training log. So I added a custom exercise for kickboxing practice and boxing practice, and they're time based. So it's pretty simple. Like I go in there and add one exercise to the workout, and I say, it was kickboxing for an hour. You know, um, it's pretty simple to log in that way. So I mean, I think you could do, and I have done similar things as far as hiking and stuff like that. It's not as detailed as like getting into which drills did you do, or if you're hiking, like what was the difficulty of the hike. I
Right.
don't think you need to get into that level of detail because it is just GPP work, but you know. Um, the option is there if you want to log it and have it all in one place. All right. So next question says, training's been going well so far. Just one quick question regarding the programming. I can't seem to find the answer in the attached PDFs, but what do the P1, P2, etc. stand for? I've noticed these in the first week of training, that my first week of training didn't have these notations. So this is just in reference to the priority system. Each workout has a priority. P1 is your priority one workout, P2 is priority two, and so on. Your week one didn't have that because it was just an intro week. You'll notice that your deload weeks won't have that either. But your main training weeks should have a priority system attached. And that's there so that you can move your schedule around and do your training. If you have to skip training, you can know which session is best for you to skip, etc. So the idea is that um, if you're constrained in any way, whether it's usually a time limitation, right? If you don't have time to do one of your workouts, or if you need to shuffle things around, and you're going to have workouts that are kind of clumped together, so the workouts at the end, you're going to be a lot more fatigued than the workouts at the beginning, say. The priority system lets you shuffle the order so that your highest priority workouts are completed when you have the most energy and feel the best and your performance is the best. And your lowest priority workouts are done when you have time, or if you don't have time, they're the first thing that gets skipped, and that has a minimal impact on your overall training result. Um, yeah, I think that's all I've got to say on this. Ross, anything you want to add?
No, you got it covered.
Okay. All right, next question will be the last one for this week. This one says, I've been on guided programming for about 20 weeks now, and I've had problems progressing my squat, and I'd like to try a new training group. So we'll get you taken care of. My current training protocol consists of working up to a top set, usually a 9 RPE, followed by back off sets for between 3 and 7 reps. My bench has been improving consistently. My deadlift is more static, but trending in the right direction. However, my squat estimated 1 rep max varies dramatically from week to week, and despite the occasional peaks in the estimated 1RM, is very up and down. Last week, despite a 2-week break, I managed to hit doubles for my bench and deadlift with a weight that beat my previous estimated 1RM max. That beat my previous 1RM max. Excuse me. I only managed to squat 172 at a RPE 9.5 or 10 for a single, and my old 1RM max 20 weeks ago was 175. Yeah, that would be frustrating for sure. Squat is technically the most inconsistent lift for me, but I think that my biggest problem is the common hip rise chest fall pattern, but I believe the default program caters well for this. Here's the link to my recent accidental squat RPE 9.5. So let's watch this video real quick. Just a second. There we go. Okay. So some things that I see, it's a bit hampered by angle. But let's stop the video right there. You've got a lot of forward lean in your squat. That by itself is not a problem. It's just kind of a function of your leverages. I wonder if taking on a slightly wider stance might help with that. Well, let me rephrase that. Taking on a slightly wider stance would allow you to squat a bit more upright. What is unknown is whether that's going to improve your squat as a whole or not. And it's harder for me to say because this is a direct side video. If we could kind of have more of a 45-degree angle between front and side, that lets us see a lot more in the squat. With that said, let's go ahead and see what you've got here. You look to be super deep, which isn't a problem, but that can affect how things show up. You're right that you do have a hip rise. It's going to be difficult to get rid of that because of your limb lengths and just your positions here. I mean, that's kind of the way the squat goes. Is typically it has some hip rise to it. It looks to, well, no, I think that's just the light. I was going to say it looks like you've got a little lower back rounding, but I think it's just the light. Ross, are you able to see anything that you want to comment on here?
Yeah, it probably won't help that much, but I think eliminating a lot of that extra head movement will help. I know I find it a lot better if I can pick a spot in front of me. You know, depending on the height of the person, it'll vary, but anywhere between 5 to 10 feet out in front of a person, pick that spot and stay focused on that spot the entire time. If, you know, especially if there's inconsistencies from week to week in the squat, I think picking that spot and keeping a eye gaze on one, focused on one spot, can potentially help eliminate some of those inconsistencies.
Okay.
You know, that's one of the goals, right? Is to try and make each squat look the same, not just in one session, but week to week as well. And I think unnecessary movement that doesn't aid in the benefit of the lift is going to impair that consistency ability.
Yeah, I agree. Well, he does mention that the squat is his least consistent movement, so something like that might help make it a bit more consistent. You know, just controlling every factor that you can.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, so I think if you try a new training group, then that's going to take care of a lot of this. Something that you want to be aware of when you're doing especially when you're doing any training with the competition lift, you want to try to execute that lift as perfectly as possible. So you're going to have a tendency to exhibit this chest fall pattern, right? Especially when the weight gets heavy, especially when the set gets difficult. Fight against that. So if you're doing, sets of 5 at 75%, which are going to be fairly easy, fight against it. If you're doing a heavy triple, fight against it. You're going to be more successful fighting against it if the weight is easier, if the RPE is lower. But you should always try to execute the competition lift as perfectly as you can, one way or another. And I think I'm getting my wires crossed a little bit. I'm not sure if we've already talked about weak ranges of motion for this lift in particular or not, but for a chest fall pattern, typically the things that we like to see are, in terms of assistance exercises, are things like pin squats, high bar squats, safety bar squats. Those seem to be the most effective. When it comes to supplemental work, you want to make sure that you're training your quads. So leg press, hack squat, single leg stuff, basically anything like that. All that stuff would be fine. That would be good. If you're already doing that, then that's fine. Keep doing it, and the change in training group will be helpful as well. So, kind of continuing on with this question, it says, regarding the group change, is there a group which trains the main movements below an RPE 9? Because my squat performance is so variable, my target weight often drops mid-session, turning into an RPE 10, and maybe my squat technique would benefit from training at a lower intensity. I'm due to test maxes on October 15th, but I'm not due to compete until November 12th. I wouldn't mind switching groups now or waiting until after the competition. I think we'll probably switch you now. We have enough time, I think, to switch you over and get you into a new group now. And I do think that I agree with your assessment here that moving into a group that has some more submax effort work would probably be good for your squat. Be aware, though, that there's going to be some type of benchmarking. So what happens most often is that there's a single at 8 RPE followed by percentage-based volume work. The single at 8 RPE is what determines the weights that you use for the rest of the session. So it's important to execute that set well. I think that will help in terms of giving you an incentive to be consistent with your performance. It's only a single, it's only one set. So hopefully it will be easier to focus for that amount of time and so on. Ross, any thoughts or things to add for this one?
I would try to encourage you as well to, while it's good to recognize some of these things, try not to overthink them, just be confident in your lift, because for what it's worth too, your movement pattern wasn't that bad at all. It certainly could have been a lot worse. So, take some confidence from that and just go own the sessions.
Cool. All right. Well, Ross, thanks for sitting in with me. Thanks for helping everyone out, offering your coaching advice. Thanks everyone for sending in questions. That's all we've got for you this week. I'd like to get some feedback on what you guys think of this format. Do you like this format better, or do you like the other format better? What do you think about all this? Because we've tried coaching calls a bunch of different ways at this point, so I'd like to know what you think. Anyway, that's all I've got for you for this week. Thanks for watching. See you next time.